So a national lockdown hasn't been ruled out, but we have been told it's not imminent as well. But is it the best approach to dealing with the virus? Brexit Party leader in the Senate, Mark Reckless, doesn't think so, and he's here to tell us why. So why?
Good evening. Well, we voted against all the coronavirus restrictions. We don't support a lockdown, and I believe it would be much better if we let people make their own judgment, their own assessment of their risk and those that they live with, and take appropriate precautions depending on what's happening with the virus. We think the government regulations and guidance have been absolutely all over the place. And if you're old, if you've got serious medical problems, if you're very overweight, it likely makes sense to shield. But a lot of those people kept shielding through to the August the 16th because they were told by the government, even though the virus was by then at very, very low levels. It's very difficult to ask them to shield again. But all these young people who would have got this virus if there hadn't been this lockdown all through the summer are now getting infected, and those infections have been postponed from the summer into the autumn and the winter, and I feel will be much more damaging because of those government restrictions that we had through the summer.
You and Boris Johnson are both libertarians. You don't like big states telling people what to do. But he's privy to briefings that we don't all see. So can't you listen to him as someone you'd probably agree with a lot of things and say, well, if he thinks we need another lockdown, if he says it, then I'll agree.
No, I think he's been all over the place, and I think he's been pushed from pillar to post largely by the media, and I fear too much by the polls. I think we should look at evidence, and if you look at what happened in Sweden, where they didn't have a lockdown, where they were told there was going to be this great exponential explosion.
Sweden is a smaller country than the UK.
Yes, it's a smaller country. It's got about 10 million people. We should look at it and draw lessons from what happened there. They didn't have a lockdown. More people were getting the virus, there were more deaths for a period, but then the rate came down, and now they're not having the second wave that so many other countries are seeing. And the reason for that is because they didn't have a lockdown and they trusted their people to make the right judgments on the basis of their risk and their information, not have central government ordering everyone what to do as if they have all the information, as if they have the knowledge of what's going to work best. We've seen they don't, and they haven't.
We did a poll earlier this month. 64% of the people in that poll said they trusted the Welsh government to make the right decisions. So the public are with the politicians. Well,
look what's been happening, and we have had actually, worse in terms of death, worse in terms of what's happened in the virus in Wales, and worse in terms of the economy. It hasn't been a success what Welsh government have been doing, and if you look at what they're saying now and what they're threatening to do to people, the reason we have this upsurge is because the infections were postponed. Everyone was locked down over the summer. And now when that's released, people are getting infected as you're going into the autumn and the winter, where the pressures on the NHS are going to be greater, where people's immune systems are less able to respond. I do not believe that has been good for Wales.
Let's talk about, you don't like the idea of lockdown. What about some other ideas? Tonight we hear that Boris Johnson will announce tomorrow that pubs and restaurants have to shut by 10. Would you support something like that?
I'd support a sensible social distancing. I would encourage people to know how the virus passes and to be apart from each other more than they otherwise would. But I would trust people's individual judgments on that rather than setting rules and trying to enforce them through government and through fines, telling people what to do.
And we should say that the Prime Minister's announcement is for England. Right, OK, let's take you back to early in the programme where we heard from Vaughan Gethin. We talked about vaccines. He didn't rule out mandating people to have this vaccine. What's your thoughts on that?
I thought it was absolutely shocking. I think the idea that the state should forcibly inject people is absolutely unacceptable.
He did say that he thought there would be a high uptake, and he just didn't say he'd rule everything out, to be fair.
And again, I would encourage people to assess their risk and the risk of the families and those that they live with. And if you're older, if you've got serious medical problems, if you're very overweight, then yes, it will almost certainly make sense for you to have a virus. But for people who either have had the disease already or are young and at much less risk, it's much less of an argument for taking it, particularly if you're not absolutely certain because it hasn't had the tests
were to become available
normally would.
Early next year, say. Would you take it?
I don't know. I would look at what happens over the time. I believe I had coronavirus back in in March. I hope and believe that because of that, I'm unlikely to get it again. I don't know that for sure, but I'm much less likely. And because of that, the virus would be less attractive than if I hadn't had it. But I think we should let people decide for themselves, not have Vaughan Gethin or the Welsh Government forcibly injecting people. That is absolutely unacceptable.
OK, well, we have to end it there. We'll have to get you back to talk about this internal markets bill, because I'm sure you've got lots to say about that.
I look forward to it. I'd be delighted to do